Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Swagel, for joining us this morning. And we've discussed in several hearings and conversations throughout the year. I mean, all of us in Congress appreciate the role that CBO plays in helping facilitate our work. And as we've talked about as well, we also know that we want CBO to do better in terms of the results. And it sounds like from some of the comments earlier from some of my colleagues and your responses is, to some degree, maybe it's JCT's fault, the Joint Committee on Taxation's fault for some of these things that, you know, we're literally making trillion-dollar decisions, whether and if the revenue estimates from a tax policy like TCJA aren't accurate, or if the cost provisions from an inflation act doesn't pan out the way it was. And if it's off as far as it might be, those policies and statutes may never get passed through that process if we have the right and accurate information. And as I talked about major pieces of information, you know, as you know, my colleague Mr. Grothman already mentioned that the energy and climate provisions in the Inflation Act were estimated at just under $400 billion, and however that's gone up in terms of your estimate, plus actually even from the get-go, it was rated higher. Credit Suisse had a double amount from the beginning. Goldman Sachs had, you know, $1.2 trillion. So obviously there's others out there that have estimating models that work that seem to be more reflective of what the actual numbers come in. And I go back to, like in reality, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I mean, the actual cumulative tax revenue through Q1 of this quarter that has come into the federal treasury has actually equaled what CBO's and JCT's estimates were before TCJA was passed. And so we're still reaping the benefits of that economic growth that came out of TCJA. And so it's really a struggle as we sit here and making decisions. So we want to make sure that we're getting the best information, the best estimates to make that happen. I know I'm talking with my colleagues and we're working on some ideas. And can you, one of the things, I guess, just as another area we talk about is executive actions. Can you talk a little bit about how CBO currently accounts for executive actions in your baseline and what you do there?
Oh, okay. No, thank you. And you know, I've gotten that message loud and clear from you directly, from the chairman, from many members of the committee that you want more information on that. It's a challenge for us because we evaluate the law, as it's written, as we understand it will be implemented, and then the administration does something, takes an action that we didn't anticipate, that maybe we couldn't anticipate given the statutory language. We update the baseline and try to provide you information as quickly as we can on it, and we're going to do more in the future. There's sometimes when the administration will put out a proposal, a preliminary rule, but is not final. And so working together with the budget committees, our procedure now is to put that in the baseline at 50%. So we say it's going to, cost $100. We put $50 in the baseline. So it gives you some information, but we know we're going to be wrong, because if they finalize it, we're too low by 50. If they cancel it or the Supreme Court cancels it, we're too high by 50. And so it's we're trying to figure out how to get you the right information, but it's something I want to work with you more on to figure out, well, what's the best way to help, to support you.
Yeah, that's, I guess, the bad part is you're always going to be wrong. I mean, if you pick a 50% and you put in $50, and because if it was one way and $100 and the other way is zero, so you're being set up to not be successful through that. I mean, and maybe some of our conversations earlier sparked the point of, JCT when they were talking about some of the international tax provisions that are being talked about by OECD. They prepared 2 or 3 different alternatives of what could happen based on those different scenarios and assumptions. And maybe that's something that CBO should look at as well in terms of, if it goes this way, then this would be the impact or the other. I think that would allow better decision and discussions around what actually does get implemented. I know I'm about out of time, but my colleague Drew Ferguson and I are working on some legislation to help with that executive action idea that I, talked about, and trying to figure out how do we address some of the spending that comes out of that may not be accurate in terms of, or may change what the estimates are. So we're looking forward to getting the best information so we can make the best decisions on these areas that we cover. So thank you for your time.